All right, it's 6:03, we can start. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for spending some time with us this evening. My name is Nico Papakostandis, I'm on the Select Board, and we want to welcome you to our first all boards meeting since June of 2015, so we're a little overdue. What's happened since 2015? Well, we have some new department heads, we have some select board members, we've created some new committees, and just a small thing called the master plan was created. So we've got a little bit to catch up on. We recognize how important your time is. We've reserved the room from 6 to 9, but we won't be here for that long. We'll be here as long as we need to be productive. One piece of housekeeping, if you don't know the password, the network is Exeter Public Library. And the password is Chestnut, all lowercase letters. Our goal this evening, the Select Board over the last year, one of the goals and objectives that we've set for ourselves was to work with boards and committees and try to find how we can be a better resource for you, how we can help some of you set goals and objectives. We recognize that some of the boards and committees are land use boards and you're bound by the statute, but more so for our advisory committees, what some of your goals are for the town, what initiatives you have, how can we be of a resource, and also looking at how we can cross-pollinate and have different committees work together on initiatives when it makes sense. So the other thing we wanted to go over is we do have new committees. Since 2015, we definitely have new committee members and new chairs. We just kind of want to go over the process of how to run a meeting, how to make motions, how to take votes, go over 91A, the right to know law, and also Robert's Rules of Order. So with that, I thought it'd be a good idea if we could go around the room and introduce ourselves, whether we're town staff, what departments, or if we're on a committee, what committee we're on. And Dave, we can start with you. Go around the room and then throughout.
Dave Sharples, town planner.
Doug Eastman, building inspector.
London Plummer, planning board chair.
Pam McElroy, I'm the assistant to the town manager, as well as I'm on the Human Services Funding Committee.
Russell Dean, town manager.
Grayson Shepherd, acting chairman, I think, for the Historic District Commission.
Julie Gilman, select board representative to HDC, Heritage Commission, Energy Committee, and I forget what else.
Molly Cowan, select board, and then rep to, let's see if I can do this. Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, Parks and Rec Communications Advisory Committee.
That's right. E911.
Yes.
Oh, and E911.
I called that. And again, I'm Nico Papakostandis, and I am the Select Board rep to the Sustainability Advisory Committee, the River Advisory Committee, and I've sat in on the the Swayze Park trustee meetings.
I'm Nancy Belanger, I'm on the Select Board, and I'm a representative to the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and Housing Advisory Commission.
Evening, my name is Melissa Roy. I am the Assistant Town Manager and HR Director for the town.
Greg Bison, Exeter Parks and Recreation.
Kristen Murphy, Conservation and Sustainability Planner. I have Conservation Commission, Energy and Sustainability Committees.
Joanna Bartel, Recording Secretary.
John Gruder, planning board and master plan oversight.
Dick Huber, chairman of the River Advisory Committee.
Lou Hitzroth, a member of the Community Power Aggregation Committee, and I'm sitting in here for my wife Renee, who is the chair of the Energy Committee.
Out of breath. Gwen English, I'm on the planning board. I'm a trustee with the Robinson Fund, Historic District representative from the planning board, and tree committee.
Dwayne Staples, chair of the Swayze Parkway trustees.
Jay Myers, chair of the Heritage Commission. Ryan Jean, new member, Sustainability Advisory Committee.
Jenna Palmer, Chair of the Sustainability Committee.
Bob Dudra, Exeter Advisory Committee, Recreation Board. Bob Kelly, Budget Committee and Water and Sewer Advisory Committee.
Don Clement, Conservation Commission.
Andrew Kopp, Chair of the Conservation Commission.
Mazzara Conservation Commission and River Advisory Committee. Mike Whistler, Recreation Advisory Committee. Nick Norton, Recreation Advisory Board. Ian Swanson, EHTV.
What you said.
Come on, we'll take a bow. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for taking time this evening. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the town manager, who's going to just review the all board meeting process, and then Mr. Sharples will talk about the master plan oversight committee.
Thank you, Nico. So the goal of the all boards meeting process is really one that's rooted in communication. So we're trying to get word out to the different boards and committees and commissions about what the rules are, but also be able to hear from you as to what you think is going well, what you think may be not going so well in your boards and committees and commissions. The establishing that chain of communication between the select board and the boards and committees is really paramount in making the process work. I know a lot of you do independent work with your boards and committees, and there's not always the opportunity to really get engaged with the select board on a regular basis. So the great opportunity we have tonight is to have that engagement take place and to hear your opinions as to what's happening. We also have, like Nico pointed out, we have some basic rules of engagement and 91A information that we want to go through it with you as well, and we'll do that. But that is the basis for this, and I think ultimately, and again, I put it back to Mr. Chairman, the issue we have always is how do we work together, how do we work communally as a group of boards and committees. We all do different things, and so sometimes it's hard for the left hand to know what the right hand's doing, so this is an opportunity for both hands to come together and talk about how things are going.
And really, one of the biggest functions of how our town government runs is through our volunteers. And each and every one of our volunteers on boards and committees are vital to how town staff, the town manager's office, and the select board can help the functionality of the town. So your roles and the time that you give are so critically important and so appreciated that, it really, as Russ said, should be interactive. We'd like to hear from you as to what some of your questions or concerns or ideas may be, so that we of the board can give you the resources that you need. And I also want to add, if there are board or committee members that couldn't be here this evening, or when you leave, if you think of a question, our emails are on the town website. Please, please, please always feel free to reach out to any of the select board members or Mr. Dean with any questions, and we'll get right back to you. And Mr. Dave, before we get to you, I don't know, anybody else on the board have introductory comments around it?
I would just like to thank everyone here for your volunteer time. Don't think it's not appreciated. We're all here to represent our town, our community, and do the best by it. So, thank you.
I was gonna say the same thing, Nancy.
Sorry. Gotta speak quicker.
I do want to thank you all. I think over my time I've worked with maybe 1,000 volunteers, and so it's always good to see the faces. But welcome and thank you for taking part in this.
I will +1 to all of that, and then the other thing that I would say is, some of the things that we've heard and had come up in town as, kind of points of contention, I think, are things that we could easily work out if everybody knows who each other is and we're communicating with the boards, or, sort of cross-pollinating and talking to people in a collaborative way. And I think, one of the things that I try to keep in mind when I'm doing this work, and I am not always the best at it, but we could do better, is there are, the different levels of collaboration, right? Where the lowest level is when, here's my plan, we staple them together and off we go. And then the highest level of collaboration is, what are we gonna do and how are we gonna write this plan together? And so, that is my aspiration. I don't know that anybody ever does it perfectly, but I think that, right, the master plan, and also as we are implementing our, various roles, responsibilities, sometimes they can be in conflict with one another. And how do we do our best to address those rubs there? So I'm glad to see everybody here. I don't need to take up any more time.
So, and as I said earlier, one of our goals and objectives of the select board earlier this year was kind of looking at all the boards and committees and trying to identify areas that we can help you with. But one of the things that we also looked at is, you know, how can we be better for you? And, you know, as select board reps, we all represent a committee. And when we go to your meetings and we attend and we participate, we come back to our select board meetings, and that's one of our agenda items, very late into the night, very late into the agenda. Usually there's nobody left in the no-back room. But each select board member gives a committee report so that we can all be briefed on the work that you're doing and what was discussed at the previous meeting. And to Selectwoman Cowan's credit, she's identified that we're 5 different personalities with 5 unique ways of representing the work. So what we're going to do as a board this year is we're going to put together some sort of a template that we can all use so that when we're presenting to each other what the work that you're doing, we can do it in a you know, the same fashion and make sure we don't forget, because, you know, again, we have multiple committees in addition to serving on the board and our day jobs. So, you know, I think it'll be a better way to represent the work that you're doing, so.
And also, you all don't have time to go to everybody else's committee, so there's that too. How can we solve for some of these problems?
This should be interactive, so if there's any questions or comments or anything, please jump in. This is meetings for all of us, so. Dave, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. Before getting into the Master Plan Oversight Committee report, just want to go to the master plan. It was shown there, Julie has a copy. And that was done and completed in 2018. And what it has, it's a pretty good document, I believe. It was great participation. We got, I mean, almost 1,000 people provide input at one stage or another. And the culmination was an action agenda at the end, and it was based in 6 categories. And there was 67 specific action items that should be addressed. Kind of a task list, basically, just a list of tasks the town's gonna try to implement or work on and research and see if it's worth, you know, implementation. And the reason why it's important here is because it touches on all the boards. If you look at the action agenda, it says what the action is, but then it says, you know, responsible town staff and then responsible boards and committees. And, you know, conservation commissions, you know, sustainability wasn't there yet, so that one wasn't in there, but sustainability has come on board. They had a conversation last night at the meeting, how to integrate, you know, get the master plan, how to help with that process. So the Conservation Commission, you know, the various boards and committees. So that's how we got there. So the Master Plan Oversight Committee, after that was done, was created by the Planning Board. It's a subcommittee of the Planning Board, and there's 3 members on it. Aaron Brown, who's the vice chair of the Planning Board, Pete Cameron, who is the clerk, and John Gruder, who is right there in the corner over there, raising his hand. And it's a 3-member board, and their main function is to ensure that the action agenda is being implemented by the various boards and committees. They also act as a sounding board for folks when they're, you know, taking on one of the action items and they, you know, bring it forward. The Master Plan Oversight Committee can vet it, provide some input before moving on. And so it's available for all you know boards and committees. Encourage you to look at the master plan, look at the action items. You know, if your board's listed as a committee, those are the things that, you know, you might be able to help us work on, and then use the MPOC as a resource. Just a couple of initiatives that the master plan, major initiatives that have happened. They reviewed a floodplain ordinance. We revised our floodplain ordinance. That was a action item in our master plan, and that was done through the RPC and Kristen Murphy and staff and so forth, and conservation. Did conservation participate in that?
We discussed it.
Yeah, that was discussed conservation, then moved to the Master Plan Oversight Committee and onto the Planning Board, and you'll see it on this year's town warrant. Another major initiative was the townwide zoning ordinance that you'll see more about in the coming year. It wasn't ready yet to put on the warrant, so we kind of backed up, and we're gonna do like a land use planning series with the Planning Board and kind of kind of understand what land use is. There was a little bit of confusion of what was being done, so I'm gonna put on like a land use planning series, talk to IT, they're gonna like make it a television show, so hopefully it'll be must-see TV. For the, you know, and maybe, you know, there's 8 to 10 episodes, and we'll learn all about land use, and then we'll get to the point where we look at the draft proposal from a much more educated standpoint. So that's another, and then a final analysis, a final task that they're doing is they're doing a master plan analysis, which I've started. I'm almost complete. I'm about 8 pages in. Out of the 67 specific action items, at least 50 of them have been either completed or being worked on. There's only a handful left that haven't been started, but I'm still seeking information on those because they're to other departments, and I've asked for that information, so we might be running out of things to do. That's why I put it in the CIP this year, and maybe do it again in the coming years to do it again. So it's very successful. It hasn't sat on the shelf, and the Master Plan Oversight Committee has made sure it keeps moving through toward implementation and shepherding those initiatives through the process.
Terrific, thank you. Any questions for Dave?
It's available online.
It is available online.
It's a readable document. We achieved several goals with that. I'm very proud of that plan, and the way we're working with it is terrific. So my hat's off to Dave and his leadership.
And the committees have done a lot.
And my
too.
little subcommittee.
Yeah, a lot of and the committees and the commissions have done a lot. A lot of this was done by our boards and committees here today.
And I think Len makes a good point. If there are folks out there that haven't read it, it is a very readable document, and I would encourage you to spend some time and go through it.
Used to be, seriously, 3 or 4 binders. Data, data, data. This gets right into the meat of it. You can always look up the data if you want it.
Right. So the next item on the agenda is intra-board communication. One of the things that the select board's been working on is trying to find ways to improve communication around town. You know, about things that are happening, things that projects that our departments are working on, improvements around town, issues that come before the board, work that you're all doing. And it's tough to find the best way to communicate. You know, especially where you have people who still rely on newspapers, some people are not on the internet, some people don't go on social media, some people don't watch Channel 22, some people do all of the above. So that's one of the struggles or one of the challenges that we're working through. But what we'd like to hear from you tonight, and department heads, and also from ourselves, is what are some ideas to improve intra-board or intra-committee communications? You know, for example, last night at the Sustainability Advisory Committee, they have 2 or 3 initiatives that they're very excited to start working on. And they'd love to get with the Energy Committee. They'd love to get with the Conservation Commission. Perhaps, you know, Dave, we brought up the Master Plan Oversight. Some of that would you know, go into that. So throwing it out for discussion, just, you know, issues that you feel as boards or committees, struggles or challenges that you feel you have without, you know, not being able to communicate between committees, or ideas that you may have, or Gwen?
Is there any way that would be a workload for somebody, and I always feel a little guilty about suggesting something that will involve work on someone's part, they're already overloaded. But is there a way that there could be a posting that could go through to an email to board members that would outline maybe the events if it could be done on a weekly basis? Planning board could send information that would detail what projects we're going to be reviewing that particular week. Other boards could do the same. Personally, I always feel like I'm a week behind. If zoning board is going to be reviewing something that will eventually come to us, I often don't know about it until it's come and gone. And it might be nice to have some kind of just a quick bulletin outlining what is happening that particular week, so people could be maybe a little bit more engaged. Let's check this out.
A number of years ago, we tried that at least with the land use boards, but it wasn't electronic because we weren't there yet. So the planning department, or building department really, sent out an email of all the agendas for just land use boards. It didn't cover, all the other ones that we've developed since then, for us to compare. It's just the agenda, the zoning board's doing X, Y, Z, might be a property the Heritage Commission is interested in. And that worked for a couple of years and then just stopped. So what you're talking about, I think, is more effective because it includes more people than just the land use boards that people are also interested in. It has a sustainability quality to it. It has conservation quality. It has an energy quality. So yeah, that's a really good idea to find a landing page for one place for all of the agendas.
Dawn?
It's a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of things to list.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you. Some towns, I know specifically Durham, issues I don't know if it's a weekly or a bi-weekly town newsletter. Newsletter. I think it comes out of, I mean, picking on Russell's office, I think it comes out of their town administrator's office, which is a considerable effort to pull all that information together and to relay it out. But I think it goes out town-wide, not just to board members. And I think I don't know if it's done by email, but that's an effective way of getting out information. Now, I know we try to do it with our EXTV weekly report, is it? But again, how do you get all the different people who are on different mediums? Whether it's email, social media, it's very difficult to do that. But, it's worth a shot of trying to pull something together that summarizes, here's what has transpired in the board's meetings over the past couple of weeks. Here's what's going on in your town. So.
That's a great idea. John?
Gwen, isn't everything available that you need on the website?
It is, but.
You forget to look at it some
But
weeks,
you have to go to, you have to find your way, navigate your way through the system to find, okay, I'm gonna go to zoning.
Meetings.
By the time I've done that, I may be up for doing another board, but probably not.
Yeah, sometimes I forget to look at it for a couple of weeks and I miss something, but I found something earlier today that I'm interested in, so I'm glad I looked.
Chetna and then Lou?
Wondered, in addition to like a newsletter or something, if the chairs of the different boards met once a quarter in person and just to see what was going on and what was coming up down the line would be useful.
I like that idea. That's a great idea. I like all of these ideas. That's a great idea. The problem that usually happens is trying to find the 4 times a year that every chair is available. But it's certainly worth trying, and even if you do it twice a year. But that's something to consider. Lou?
I think Renee suggested maybe a year ago, kind of a monthly newsletter that would go around to each board, or each board would have just a brief paragraph of what they're working on that month. Not a whole agenda, but just a short paragraph. I don't know where that idea went, but I thought it was a good idea for allowing boards to understand, what's the Energy Committee doing? Does it have anything to do with what sustainability is doing and so forth? Just something short that could be emailed.
Good idea as well.
Maybe the format that we come up with for the select board reports might be a helpful thing for the different, depending on what we end up doing.
Yeah.
But for disseminating amongst the different boards and commissions and committees.
So I'm thinking that, if you go on Facebook or other social media platforms, I just know Facebook because that's the extent of my techiness. Exeter TV does a wonderful job of posting that video, which is the Exeter, I forget what it's called, but Exeter Weekly Report. And they also will you'll see a post where they'll list, here are all the Exeter town meetings for the week, the day, the time, etc. So a couple questions, would our website have the capacity to absorb maybe that quick video? You know, we could advertise that it's on the website, make it very easy. And I don't know the answer to that, but I'm just throwing it out. If the website has the capacity to take that in.
The deliberations, the whole thing is on, the session was on.
I mean, it should be,
it's on the
presumably,
website.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I would work.
It is. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Will.
We link all of the, if you go to, you know, exeternh.gov and you go to meetings, the meetings tab, it has all the meetings, you hit view details, you go to the specific
Right.
meeting, every video of the meeting is linked there, as well as the packet and the agenda.
Correct.
So you can just go down the line. About the weekly report, I'm not sure if it is, I don't think it's put onto the website, is it?
Because that could change it, you know, and everything's
Yeah.
there, but just for like quick access, you know, like Gwen said, you know, you can go through a couple different committees, but then, you know, you gotta go do something else and you don't have time. But just that bi-weekly report, if that's like front and center on the website, so when you go on the website, you can click on it real quick and watch it for 10 minutes. I mean, that might be somewhat useful.
Yeah, for sure.
Don?
Just another point, with going to the website or going to Facebook or whatever social media, people have to go there. Sometimes pushing it out to them, so it's there.
Yep.
They're getting it, popping into their email automatically, there it is. They're not required to go and get something. I think a lot of people find in communication, it's much more effective for getting the word out or getting information out if you push it out rather than actually.
You don't have to do it, right.
And we also found out that we have 3 different email, what do you call it, email?
Newsletters.
Yeah, so the idea is to try to find a way to merge all the email addresses that are available into one usable or user-friendly.
And we are actually talking
Source.
about that now, working on
Yeah.
that.
The other thing that speaks to Don's mention of the newsletter in Durham is that I actually sit on a board with one of their select people or counselors, I forget which one. Anyway, their newsletter is you have a subscription to. So how we have on some of ours, follow us on Facebook or whatever. This one, somebody would be like the whatever the police department has, a fire department has for the red code. You know, if an emergency happens, they call you, but you have to subscribe and put your phone number in. This would be the same kind of thing. You subscribe and put your email in, and it goes out to you. And one of the things that I found at state level anyway is that we're really caught up in the multimedia way, you know, to get the word out to everyone that it's not, that we can't just rely on TV or we can't just rely on email. And at some point we have to at least start, you know, put it out there. And the most common way is through email, I think. So, you know, if we do this kind of thing, I think that I would recommend that we do that, have people subscribe with their email, and then people can talk to each other, and maybe you'll get in the paper, maybe you're.
Well, we had a start, right? Exeter TV you subscribe to their weekly reports and things like that. So we're starting. We'll just have to see how we can progress with this a little bit more, I think.
But if we can find a way to access folks' email addresses and push that out, and then circle back to Lou, what you talked about, if we could find a way, and I appreciate Gwen's concern about staff and time that it would take, but if we could find a way for chairs to write that quick paragraph and submit it into town, and I'm looking to you, Russ, I don't know the answer, but we can find a way to maybe charge one person to package it, check it for accuracy, and then blast that out as well.
Again, I guess I would say if the whole idea is inter-committee communication, short is probably better than long.
Right. Less is always more. Mr. Whistler?
Wouldn't it be fairly simple on the launch page of the town website to just have this week in town? These are the board meetings, this is the new business.
Do we have, I don't know that we have it just like that, but that's a good idea if we could.
So we feature things on our front page.
Yep.
Basically, there's, we call them buttons, but the ones that are right below as you scroll down, the major events of the week. We have about 4 or 5 of those every week. So that's something we've been working on.
Hold on, Concom back there.
Yeah, not to throw wrenches into anything, but I think it really makes sense to have some really thoughtful planning as to who an audience actually is and what kind of mechanisms we can actually reach out to them with. Because I feel that communication just in general is really all-encompassing. And there's some great ideas going around here, but I can tell you that when you actually start drilling down to audiences, some are going to be effective for some folks and some are going to be effective for others. Right. So if we're talking about intra-board communication, I think something that we can all go to in an agreed-upon place that's very quick and very digestible is going to be very useful for me.
Sure.
But as like general Joe public, when we actually need to communicate with them, it's going to be wildly different, and that delivery method is going to be, very sensitive.
Yep, that's a good point. Will, you had your hand up?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna mention that at least for like the general public, Bob had been doing Bob Glowacki had been doing like select board recaps, every week, and releasing that separately, so you kind of get an idea of how the select board went, and then it tells you, go watch the full thing. But recently, we've started doing something like meeting minutes, which is we're adding in more of the meetings that we're doing, and then we're trying to condense them down to literally just a minute or like a minute 20 of just like, here's some broad things, a couple clips of what went on here, watch more. And we're releasing it in a format, so if you're like scrolling on, they have those Reels things on like YouTube and Instagram, you'll see that. And if you're an Exeter citizen, you might actually have someone watch a meeting, which is really hard to get someone to do that, but if they get all the interesting bits in like a minute, they might. So that's just one way we've been reaching out to like, not you guys, but like the greater public.
Right. Gwen?
I'm almost embarrassed to throw out this idea because it seems really old-fashioned, but to cast a wider net, if we had a bulletin board near the town office building that would, like they have at the gas stations or wherever, we don't have the IOPA anymore to put anything on, but if we had something there that would, just for the week, planning board will meet this week, select board meets, and it wouldn't change all that much because everybody meets pretty frequently, but it might, people stopped by the bandstand waiting to take the turn, they might happen to look up and see that information, and it might just pique enough curiosity that they'll look into that, or I don't know.
I think it would certainly, that would satisfy one audience for sure. I mean, I'm sure there are folks that come into town office for whatever reason that may not have social media or go on social media. So, I mean, I don't think there are any bad options, but I'm going to go back to you, and I think you're right. I mean, we've got 2 different initiatives here. One is the intra-committee, intra-board communication and how we can improve on that, and then the wider scope of communicating to folks in town all the work that we're doing. And I think that we have to go at it it's 2 different initiatives, trying to accomplish 2 different things, both of which are important. John?
Yeah, just one thing, I'm looking at what's online, the list of meetings, and the Energy Committee had a meeting this afternoon at 3:30, and their draft minutes are already on the website. It's pretty good.
That's very good.
So I can read what happened. Yeah, that's a good way to get things done.
He's in Florida.
That's why I do that. But then, you have to view the details of the meeting sometimes. What does the agenda have to be posted 48 hours ahead of time? 24. So that's probably, if you're an interested homeowner, that may be kind of short notice. But, sometimes the whole packet's included. So it's pretty good if you search a little bit.
No, the information's there. I mean, there's no issue with lack of transparency. It's a matter of ease, and as Don and Gwen alluded to, you have to put in some time and effort. communications there.
Nico?
Yes.
Andy, when we had a communication meeting a month ago, we talked about the website's ability. I come from a community that you can subscribe to the agenda of a certain board. So for example, I get the select board agenda sent to me, the Concom agenda, and one other ones. And essentially when it gets posted online, there's like a next step, and you can go in and say, I'd like these, and it just creates a sort of listserv, and those people that want that agenda, when it gets posted, get sort of to Dawn's point about pushing the information out. Was there any success? Bob thought our website could do that. I don't know where we stood on that.
He's working on an email newsletter, will work on the same principle.
Okay.
It's just a matter of figuring out how to get that information to the right spot and paying for it.
Absolutely. That's another piece of this, is some of these email systems that can do some of this. It's nice for me. I forget, oh, we had a Concom meeting, and I get an email as soon as the agenda is posted. So it's part of the final step of posting it on the website in the community that I'm in. I don't know if that would require making sure that the agenda is sort of following a format, that they feel like they're getting the information on that agenda to know what's coming up, but I don't know if anybody's interested in something like that.
That sounds good. And then dare I say, in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, the town manager is now doing a regular podcast. I'm not sure we're ready for that.
Microphone selection is needed. You gotta get the right microphone for that. Good idea, Mr. Chairman, good idea.
You have the lighting from COVID.
I know the next podcast I'm tuning into. Thank you.
All right. So, I think these are all worthwhile ideas to look into, but again, treating it separately from the, inter-board and committee communication versus, and I think they're both initiatives we should look into sooner than later and start that process.
Agree, and we can prioritize these things as well.
Right.
If there are costs or in-house personnel that are needed in order to do this, we'll bring that forward too.
Okay, all right, fantastic. Any other suggestions or questions? Julie?
A number of years ago, probably at our last all boards meeting, we talked about someone representing each board, maybe the chair, but it's a lot of drain on him to go and introduce that board or commission to the next one, like having the HDC chair go to the planning board and say, this is what the HDC does. Because some people don't know, newer people on the board don't know how we interact. So it was, it's going to be kind of a chain event and make sure everybody had people that or boards and committees that they wanted to see, or people that had boards or committees they wanted to come see them. And it never really got off the ground. People are busy and was another meeting and just really never happened. But I think that's kind of an important thing, is to introduce each other. Because, for example, there was a project that the planning board approved that had a building on it that was going to be demolished. And in fact, the Heritage Commission should have seen it first in order to recommend if it was going to be a loss to the town. But they didn't know that. So, this is something that we need to introduce each other about. So, that's another.
That's a good.
That's a physical.
Doug?
Yeah, on a different note, but I'm glad Kristen and Julie and Jay are here, who are representing HDC, Historic District Commission, and we also have the Heritage Commission. And I was doing some reading, and it appears in the RSAs that the Heritage Commission, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the Heritage Commission and the HDC can be one. Am I correct?
Yep.
So, with the fact, one of the facts is the having problems getting volunteers. But I think we're gonna work through that and we're gonna be good. But would it make sense, and I'm just asking the question, would it make sense to combine the Heritage Commission and the HDC as one board? So they could, you'd be looking at the same thing?
That's a enabling thing. We have to go to town meeting for that. Because those boards are, too late. Those boards are established by town meeting. So in order to
Really?
to,
Okay.
you know, disband them or
Okay.
combine them, we'd have to go to town meeting. And plus we need to know if anybody's interested in that.
Well, yeah, I mean, but you could, ask your board members, would you guys be interested in doing that? I'm thinking
I'd
it
rather
may
have
save
new
everybody a lot of work. What's that?
I'd rather have new volunteers.
Well, no, I get that, and one other thing, I invited her tonight to come to the meeting, but she wasn't feeling too well. But Barb McAvoy is in our department, Dave and I, planning, Kristen, she is the best.
Institutional knowledge that.
And it's not only that, but she solves problems. Like today we had a problem about, scheduling an application that's coming up soon. And, sometimes these applicants don't like to hear that. I gotta shove you off for another month. But, Barb comes up with these ideas of, well, let's just push it off. Can we just push it off for a day? I'm sorry, for a week. Can we do it next week? So she's like right on her computer, notifying the board members and saying, hey, we can do it next week. Does this work for everybody? And today was a testimonial to that, that we moved at the historic district meeting to next week, so that it works for everybody. But I just want to go on record that Barb, and I know you all know that, but she is just.
Still worth repeating,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Still worth saying so.
Yeah, I can't say enough. I mean,
Yeah.
And when she leaves, I'm in trouble.
Don't even put that out.
And Dave too, I mean, we both, Dave and I, depend on Barb and Kristen, and, it's just a really good department up there. We try to keep everybody in the loop. So anyways, I just thought I'd throw that out there, but
Thank you.
if we can't do it, maybe it's next year, we talk about it, but that's up to you guys. You let us know what you want to do, and we'll make it happen. How's that?
No, thank you for that update, Doug. I didn't realize that was a possibility, so that's something worth exploring, I
So
think.
it's worth exploring. It gives you and us 13 months to folks. But short of that.
I will say, I am not in favor, but we'll certainly consider it.
Oh, okay, well,
Everything's worth considering and discussing.
I know
Yes.
we'd like to have more volunteers, because
We're going to do what's best for
Right, the
But
town,
just-
make
just
sure
thought
we're
throw it out
functioning.
I mean, I'll just add to that, I appreciate Doug's idea. I mean, it is worth discussing, and having enough volunteers is a reality that at least the Heritage Commission is facing, and some of us are terming out and deciding whether we continue to volunteer.
Right.
So it is an important discussion, yeah.
Thank you, that's important. Thank you. Go ahead.
How can we get the word out to the public that there is a need for, how does that happen? Is it just word of mouth or?
We've begged, some of us have knocked on doors, we've resorted to almost
I know.
kidnapping when
Yeah.
folks come in to vote.
Pamphlets, website.
Yeah,
Trying
So-
to coach.
people come to public comment, right? People come to be interviewed and we try to get them to go on more committees.
Or another one.
Yeah.
No, you don't want that one.
No, all kidding aside, we take that seriously, all 5 of us take that seriously. We've reached out to department heads, we've reached out to you as committee members. Certainly, and I know Molly and I have done this, when folks have emailed us on a particular matter that's of interest to them, we've met with them and individually we've tag teamed, and I wasn't kidding about the kidnapping, but
He is a kidnapper.
but no, it's a huge time commitment, and that's why, and that's why we spread the word to folks. It's so important, the work that you do and the time that you give. Every committee and board is important to the functionality of our local government, and it's a time commitment. It doesn't matter what committee or board you're on, it's a time commitment. And we recognize that folks are busy. And so we've talked about ways, you know, because particularly for younger folks with childcare. You know, so we've brainstormed amongst us, like, how do we solve that? So it's something that we continually work on, but yeah, word of mouth, as Mr. Dean said, pamphlets.
We did have pamphlets at deliberative session. I don't know if anybody saw them. I want to give Pam a credit for that. She was the one who pulled together the brochure. Very good job. Looks very nice. And we're trying to get those pamphlets out there and just let people know that we're consistently recruiting for our boards and committees and commissions. So
There's a button on the website too, right?
Yes.
Volunteer
So-
opportunities.
We do that on voting day, stand out there and solicit.
They will be at voting day. They're here in the library, and I'm going to also request that there be some at the historic, help me out here.
Historic Society.
Thank you, yes. So
But I guess-
we are trying to get them out around town as well.
I mean, could people actually stand there and hand these
Well,
things out?
if we have volunteers that would like to hand them out.
Sorry, I'm gonna be working with those.
Or other committee members, you know, if they'd like to hand them out, I certainly have plenty of brochures that
Okay.
we could do that with, yes.
The energy, who's a deliberative session? Thank you. Maybe they wouldn't mind having them on the corner of their table.
Sure.
Thank you.
So Nico's point about, no, I forgot him, so let's move on.
Agenda.
Oh, I know, the, having childcare, I know, is a big problem for, people that wanna sit on boards that meet once a month. Planning board meets twice a month, and those people are incredible to me that they stick it out. Childcare at the town office building is virtually impossible, and it's random nights a week for a random number of hours. You know, we gotta figure out something that we can pay somebody for 4 hours, and like we do our recording secretaries, and a place that can handle anything from infant to teenager. But what we found out during COVID was that we got more volunteers and more people watching the meetings because they could sit at home and their kids could be there and they didn't have to travel and find a babysitter. You know, when I started as a select board, I spent my, whatever it is, a few dollars on babysitter. So there you go. One of the things we're trying to get done at the State House is loosen that up so that more people can be calling in or online, zooming in. I don't know how that's gonna go. It's not in my committee, so I couldn't make a big argument for it, but we'll send out as much as I can the House bill number for it if it hasn't already been talked about. It's really important, I think, that the testimony was all about how we saw so much more improvement, and since we've had to meet in person, the numbers have dwindled. We've had people leaving.
That's crucial.
They just can't make the commitment.
And that's such a game changer. I mean, and that's the thing, is the RSA, you have to have you have to be present. During COVID, there was an emergency order that was issued by the governor, and that's why we were able to do that. But what a game changer that would be, you know, if something could get passed at the state level. And we know you're trying, all of you collectively.
Yeah,
Chetna?
that would be a big change.
Just going back on the recruitment side of things, just wondered whether there was potential for, when we have the festival at Swayze Park or other sort of public events, to have a table, you know, with somebody, you know, with somebody from the committee or the select board there, so that can talk to the people who attend those festivals, and just talk about volunteering for a committee, you know, or putting their name forward.
So which festivals?
Well, like the ones Scott Ruffner does with his team, and you know, when we have the Independence Festival.
So that's a privately permitted event, and I'm not sure
Yeah,
that
I
we could.
wouldn't
Is it?
imagine that's, but I
Is
could
that-
look into it.
You
You
could
can sit on the
ask.
sidewalk.
Yeah.
You know,
Let's see, there
Yeah.
might be a fee.
We did have once a volunteer fair too at the at the town hall, and we had a table for each committee and someone to chat. We had copies of the master plan and the zoning ordinance and mission statements, things like that. And people just came through and did pick up a couple of volunteers. I don't know if the whole
And
thing
also-
effort was good.
Also getting those leaflets out that Pam did, to like the, D squared and all this, and me and Ollie's, in the coffee shops and whatever, that people can pick up and and read, and, it's just to get that word out there.
So on that line, could I suggest that, I really don't know if we can do a private event, but we could ask, but could we have some of the volunteer pamphlets at the town hall building in the entryway? Is there an area?
The town hall or the town offices?
Town hall, where events are, even though they're public. If we had, I think that we would be okay if we had.
It's town property.
It's town
It's a town
property,
building.
and it would be, I believe the old windows are still there or something, or, so we could, that's a good idea. You just gave me an idea to jump on it at the other side, but, definitely for those events, we could.
I suggest calling your friends. I mean, we all have lots of friends in
Well,
this town, and I think. and-
Meeting at coffee shops.
No, but I mean,
random
really, I mean,
Yeah.
I've wrapped up a couple of people here in the last month, and it was like through, hey, listen, what can you do for us here?
I'm trying.
Well,
So-
it's that, or, I mean, I look at this gentleman here who's a recent appointee to the Sustainability Committee. He attended every meeting for the last year and had plenty of comment and was passionate. And
Right.
I said to him after the meeting in December, like, why don't you fill out an application?
Cool.
You could sit up there and contribute, and here he is. I mean, he's attended one meeting, he's been appointed 2 weeks, and he's at the all-board meeting, so we need to find more folks like Ryan.
So when are you
And
releasing him
he's
from his
attending
captivity?
the energy
sorry.
committee as
When
well.
are you releasing him from his captivity?
I can't disclose that, I can't disclose that. Mike Whistler, you had your hand up.
Julie, what's the best thing as a citizen voter to do for the effort to make the Zoom meetings or online meetings law?
Great question.
I know, frankly, I have to do something on the website to walk you through all the places that you can go to communicate. I will tell you right now, my phone is dead, so I can't look up when that particular bill is going to be heard. But there's a couple of different ways using the general court's website. You can email all the committee members, you can email the whole house, you can go online. The best thing to do right now is to go online, and there's a thing at the bottom of the general court webpage that says remote testimony. And you can click on that, and if you know which committee you're going to, which is not always clear, because I had an election law bill that came to my committee, municipal and county government, and it should not have been in my committee. So, but if you hear about a bill, keep your ear to the ground. So anyway, let me finish that part first, and then I'll get back to how do you hear about a bill. So you select the committee and then the bill, and you can click I support, I oppose. And then every board and committee member sees that. And they see what town you're from, and that's about it. Your name and your town and what you support. The way to hear about bills that are happening is sort of like what we're going through with meetings right now, is that you have to go look, which is unfortunate. But I'll tell you, my committee had 50 bills, another committee had 125. So there's like not enough time in our lives to say, hey, let me send this out to everybody. But I think I try to highlight what's going on as much as I can. I know I said the other night at the sustainability that it's really hard for representatives to keep up tabs on Senate bills, and there are less of those. So if anybody wants to watch the Senate and tell me what's going on, I'd appreciate that. Go on the general court website, and there's a search bill house or search bills, and you can do it by text. Just pick a word you want. video or absence or something like that, remote, yeah. And any bill that uses those words will come up, and that way you can read the bill, decide if it's one you want to comment on or not. I would recommend that starting there. I mean, I only can talk so much about what I see, and some of it just is kind of useless, so I only talk about the ones that are important, or important to us collectively.
It is House Bill 254.
Thank you. I have my computer died.
It was sponsored by Alexis Simpson, who is our state rep from here.
HB 254, is that what you?
254.
And they've already decided it ought to pass, so it will be going to the House floor.
No, that's not right.
So I think it's House Bill 1014.
No.
New Hampshire's right to know law would be updated to state that a physical location is not required for any meeting. Instead, the bill states meetings could be held remotely if the body provided access by telephone. Additional access could also be provided by video or other electronic means, the bill says.
What bill number is
What's that number again?
House Bill 1014.
That was?
2023 session?
That was what
20.
that,
Said, oh,
No,
that's
oh,
2022.
22, I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
so it's,
Sorry.
no, that's okay, it's
I was like, where?
House Bill 254.
So it is 254.
It is
Sorry about
254.
that.
No, right.
But then is this,
Yeah, but they're gonna, so the minority report is off to pass, the committee report is inexpedient to legislate, which means they wanna kill it.
It is going on to our regular calendar, so it's on the House floor.
Yeah, so go to the Genport website, search this bill, say email the entire house, and say that you support it.
Julie, is there a deadline for folks to?
At this point, because it's been through the executive process, there's the deadline for submitting testimony to the committee is passed. There's no deadline for emailing the whole house, believe me.
Did everybody hear that? Okay.
And you should email the whole house because your local reps will vote for this.
Yeah, and plus, we're so close in the demographic at the house that people are listening more to other than their town's constituents.
Mike, thank you for that question.
Yeah. I wish I could be more, let me push this out to you, but there's so many, 1,000 bills.
I can Google.
don't Google 2022.
Yeah.
I'll just add, maybe in the interim on that, because I've been using this, because the 91A requires that you have to have a quorum physically present, unless there's an emergency, and an emergency is not as high a bar as it sounds, but I don't want to talk about that, but it does say that a member of the public body may participate in a meeting other than by attendance in person at the location of the meeting, only when such attendance is not reasonably practical. Any reason that such attendance is not reasonably practical shall be stated in the minutes of the meeting. I've used that just recently several times because I think reasonably practical is a pretty low bar. And like we had a planning board member that wasn't feeling good. Okay, good enough to attend the meeting, but it's not reasonably practical to go and, as you're contagious, and join a meeting. So that was a reason. There was another one with kids at home. She like, oh, my husband was away. It's not reasonably practical to leave a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old at the house so she can participate. So as long as you have the quorum physically present, I think you can add participation through this.
Absolutely. I mean, we've done that as recently as this year with the select board, even with the town manager recently. And so, but I think that what we're looking at is that if you're trying to recruit more people, and the norm is going to be that it's not reasonably practical, I think until that law's passed, I mean, that is there. And of course, when you do have somebody participating remote, all the votes have to be done via roll call. Which, just, but, Chetna?
Just want to add that as a on a sustainability point of view, it will reduce your carbon footprint if you're fully remote.
Exactly.
You
Just
are
saying.
correct. Absolutely. Recognizing a few of you did indicate that you needed to leave early, I'd like to pivot to Mr. Dean to go over, somebody asked a question about when a meeting needs to be posted. It's within 24 hours, but the meeting has to be posted within 24 hours, not the chair letting the town know that it has to be posted. So if you could walk through that, Mr. Dean, and then also some of the, just the high notes on 91A and walking through a meeting.
Sure.
Great, thank you.
First thing I want to say is that 91A compliance is paramount. It's extremely, extremely important. There are a number of court cases that are out there where 91A was not complied with, and therefore it generated penalties for the community. And we don't want to find ourselves in that boat. So we need to continually be vigilant about 91A rules and regulations and how it works. One of the reasons we put this information in the packet is so everybody can take away the basics of 91A in terms of meetings, what constitutes a meeting, and actually we'll start right with that first sheet. Is it a meeting? This is a great flow chart. It will tell you at the start, for example, has a quorum of the public body been convened? Yes. Are participating members able to communicate with each other contemporaneously? Yes. Was it convened for the purpose of discussing or acting on matters over which the body has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power? Yes. It's a meeting and must comply with 91A2. So that includes the posting, it includes minutes, and so forth. Going over to the no column, if there's not a quorum, it asks the question again, are there sequential communications involving in the aggregate or quorum of the body? Yes, and yes constitutes unlawful communications outside a meeting. So sequential communications are a very important part of this, especially with email. It's very easy to conduct business not knowing it via sequential communication. So that's an important part of the law that needs to be really focused on. On the question of sequential communications, if the answer is no, there's no violation, so you don't have to worry about that. Any questions on this flow chart at all? It's pretty self-explanatory. Next sheet is public meetings. Just the basic rule, all meetings of public bodies must have proper notice and be open to the public. This talks about the different provisions of that, including notice, what open to the public means, talks about telephone participation, electronic means, we just talked about that to some degree. Deliberations, again, the big thing on deliberations, public bodies may only deliberate in properly held meetings and may not use communication outside a meeting, such as sequential emails or phone calls, to circumvent the spirit or purpose of the law under 91A. So it's a very important point to keep in mind. Minutes, you have to keep minutes. They have to be available within 5 business days. And they must include members present, others participating, in a brief description of the subjects discussed, and final decisions made. So that's important. Non-public sessions are a whole other part of the law, and I won't go into heavy detail on that, but there is an outline here that will help you with that. Governmental records, what constitutes records, the basic rules around records. Deleting electronic records, that's an important one to know. Electronic records are not subject to disclosure after they have been initially and legally deleted, so that they are no longer readily accessible to the public body or agency. A record is legally deleted if the retention period has ended and there are no outstanding or disputed requests for the item. So, and it even tells you how to delete. To delete, you must empty the deleted items or recycle bin folder, RSA 91A4. You'd be amazed at how many requests come in for electronic records, and if you don't follow this process, then likely it's going to be discoverable in some action that is taken. So we'll move on to draft meeting minutes. There are some practical considerations for minutes. One of the interesting things about minutes is that under section B here, it talks about There is no requirement in the right to know law that any board act to approve its draft minutes. So really, draft minutes are all you need of a meeting to make it official. It does say though, however, it's a near universal practice for all boards to review the minutes that were created within the 5-day time frame.
You haven't approved the minutes in 2 months? I think it's automatically being approved. Started that for hours.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
So there's I don't remember, it's either 60 days or 90 days if your committee doesn't meet because you have no business to carry out or only meets quarterly. Your meeting minutes are deemed approved or released. It'll say, whatever the word is, unapproved on it, but they really are. You're not going back to change them.
So we'd advise all the chairs of the committees to look over the minutes provisions and make sure that you're following them. And again, we can be a resource if there are questions from boards or committees. Definitely go through your staff people that are assigned to the committee. If you don't have a person assigned, you can definitely go through the town manager's office anytime. If you have questions about this, we'll work with you to make sure that the whole goal we have is that people are compliant with 91A and what it requires. So we'll work with you on that. For non-public session minutes, there's a checklist as far as it's a good idea to keep this form and check off the different reasons for going into non-public session. And then the roll call vote is just a support system if need be for non-public sessions. Again, there's another right to know provision regarding meetings. What is a public body? What notice is required? What is open to the public? Everything you want to know about a meeting and what is a meeting. Yeah, governmental records, again, going through the provisions of governmental records. What is a record? Electronic communication, good to read through this. Again, just one of the rules of thumb that comes up, email is a meeting, no. Legal meetings may never be conducted by email or any other format. That does not allow the public to hear, read, or discern the discussion contemporaneously at the meeting location. One thing I do want to point out is that scheduling a meeting doesn't fall under these provisions. You probably heard that already, so that you don't have to worry about, in terms of sequential communications, if you're just scheduling a meeting, time, date, place, that it doesn't fall under a meeting as the definition of 91A. I think that's it for the right to know part.
Can I? I just want to check the name. Sorry, hold on.
We just got, like, fast forward.
No, I know. I just want to, for the people, because I know there were a few people that said they have to leave in like the next 5 minutes. For the training, especially 91A, it's available every year. So I just want to make sure if you we'll probably repeat this again, but when you sign up for those 91A training, if you can't make it, you're going to get an email with a recording of the meeting. So they're just, I do them every year because there are law changes and things, and they're different scenarios, so for those of you who have to leave early.
And Russ, I want to jump in real quick. For those that may have to leave, the second to last page, we put together a cheat sheet on how a chair should run a meeting. There are times where chairs are unavailable or something comes up and either the vice chair has to run the meeting or the clerk or the secretary, depending upon what your offices are. This is a quick cheat sheet that your chairs and vice chairs should all have that runs through how to open a meeting, how to introduce the committee members, how to approve the minutes, how to make a motion, how to second a motion, how to vote on a motion. Simply moving something and seconding it is not a vote. You actually have to vote. Give people an opportunity, yay or nay. If you have public comment, if people are there, it runs through public comment. If for some reason your board or committee is opening a public hearing, how to open and close a public hearing. But it's a great little one-page cheat sheet that if anybody has to step in, you're unfamiliar, This will guide you through. And then the last page is an attendance sheet that chairs should be keeping because attendance is also critical. We look at it when we go to reappoint folks. I mean, if they're up for reappointment and they want to be reappointed, but they've only gone to 5 meetings in 3 years, I mean, that's something that we look at. So I'm sorry, Russ, I didn't mean to jump in.
No, that's fine.
Okay, and so I think any packets or things that you bring to your meetings with you, it's important to include this cheat sheet. You never know when you're gonna walk in a meeting and have to fulfill a role at the last minute, so I think it's important. Can I add those other two things? So just keep in mind when you're doing your agenda, it's 24 hours. That 24 hours does not include weekends or holidays. So on a Saturday, if you're emailing the town manager's office, they obviously are not there and it's a weekend. So you cannot email that you're going to have a meeting Monday at 6 o'clock because that's the weekend. So we have to keep in mind that the 24-hour notice does not include weekends and holidays.
Do you want to say anything to there? Because I know they come to you, so.
Yes, thank you for that, I really appreciate that, Nancy. Please also do keep in mind that if there's a holiday, so it's not just weekends, but holidays, if I'm out of the office, I could be sick someday, and somebody may not get that email. If I'm on vacation or if I have a planned day out, usually Joanna is there for me. But there may be times when she's not able to be there. So a couple days is preferable if you can do that. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
So keep in mind that if Pam's not there or Joanna's not there and that meeting's not posted, you cannot have the meeting. So it's important to recognize that. We ran into a problem once when we were going into non-public, we went downstairs and there was a meeting going on. It's part of communication too. And then the other thing I want to suggest that I've done in the past for Housing Advisory Committee is a good idea for the end of a year or the first thing at the beginning of a year is to have your meeting dates. Go over your meeting dates with your committees. It actually helps to see if there are any conflicts. If it falls on a holiday, unusual, whatever, and that way you can give your meeting dates to Pam once you go over it with your other members, and she can post those meetings on the town website, and someone can actually go on and say, oh, so I know this committee meets these dates. We're trying to communicate. Simple thing, but I think it's an important thing to do.
No, the other thing too, I'm sorry, Pam, the other thing too is you don't need 24 hours to cancel a meeting. So if you set up, a full calendar's worth of meetings and something comes up, you can call the town manager's office that day to cancel the meeting. You just can't.
Schedule one.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
If I can just add on to what Nancy just said, okay, I just lost it.
So you can, while you're thinking, you can always change your meeting date if you need to, if something comes up, but it's just helpful.
So I was
for
thinking
availability
about
purposes.
having the meetings for the entire year. If we're looking for volunteers, the volunteers may want to look on the calendar to see what day the meeting is each month. So it's helpful that way too in getting new volunteers to join the committees.
One other thing is to, depending upon the time that your committee is meeting, just make sure that the building is accessible. We've had a couple of committees that start their meetings at 4:30. The door's locked at the town office at 4:30, so we have to be able to make arrangements to actually open the building so the public can access the meeting. So that's another thing just to keep in mind.
That brings to me a point that if I don't attend the committee meetings, that I am the select board rep too, they have no way to get into the building after 4:30.
If the meeting is being televised by EXTV, usually someone from EXTV has a key to the building and they'll open it.
Or if town staff if somebody's representing the town.
Police department.
That's the final, yeah.
And we did that once.
We did, and I know for planning, I have a key, but, Mr. Sharples, our town planner, usually gets there early and unlocks the door, but if something's up and he might be running a little late, he calls me and says, you know, so.
Ryan had a thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I would just wanted to say that as until recently a member of the public that would use that calendar specifically to find out when these meetings were occurring, Energy Committee and Sustainability Advisory Committee, that was absolutely invaluable. Realistically, I'm at work, I work 10 hours a day. This is a volunteer position. Going to these public meetings was something that I wanted to do due to the passion that I had for the subject. But if I didn't know when they were, I wasn't going to show up. One of the things that occurred was that there was a canceled meeting, and I had changed my schedule to be able to attend this meeting. And I had put it on my calendar a week before to make sure that I was there. However, there was no form of notification that I saw that had come out stating, hey, this meeting is now canceled. I showed up at the town hall and it was locked. There was no one there. And I was, kind of bummed about it because I had kind of made a point to be there. And just wanted to kind of share that because, as one of the only members of the public that showed up at these meetings in person, I was a little put off. So.
Thank you for pointing that out. And we've had to cancel at the last minute. I've been at a meeting upstairs and people coming up the stairs going, where are the people for the meeting down? So we're trying to do better. We're trying to put at least notices on the door because there's no way, no mechanism to let people know at the last minute that.
It's a cancellation of the historic committee on the 16th. See, it's on the website.
Right, but it's not last minute. So that's right. But we've had a few problems with literally last minute. There wasn't going to be a quorum, so there was no meeting, and no one had the way. And there's no way to know until you get there and find out there's no meeting. So we're trying to at least put notices on the door, something.
Yeah.
But thank you for bringing that up.
Of course, yeah. And in form of cancellation, you said that there is no time requirement for that. And what about rescheduling? Can it be rescheduled at the same time as it's canceled?
It has to be posted 24 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Okay.
the committee would have to meet to talk about the dates everyone's available to
Right.
schedule. So think about the last minute, you have your quorum, say your 5 members are your quorum, and at the last minute, someone calls the department head or the chair of that committee and says, my child is sick, I can't leave them, or someone's fallen and hurt themselves, you know that quorum's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Right, so they can't have the meeting,
Right.
so.
If it's canceled, they typically will reestablish a date because there's a lot of factors, the applicants and everything. But typically, we will notify of cancellation at the same time. There'll be a new date set up.
And that was what I was curious.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
that's for the
I can't say
boards.
for all boards,
Right.
but for the zoning board. and
So to what Ryan's saying though, if you, one or two things can happen and you're not violating 91A. If you have that situation, the chair can send out an email to the committee stating that we have to reschedule the meeting. The following meeting will be whenever that is. As long as the rest of the committee doesn't reply back to the chair, you're not having a discussion, you're not violating 91A. The better and more practical way to get around that though is that, and with your committee, you have Kristen. If you have town staff, we do this as a select board with Mr. Dean. If you have town staff and you need to communicate to your board, you can have the town staff communicate. You can reply all to town staff, or not reply all, you can reply to town staff and have that discussion about the time. You never reply all. But you can reply to town staff and you're not violating because town staff's not part of the committee.
Understood.
Glad you brought that point up, because I haven't heard anything about, there's no discussion between meetings. We only act when we're in a meeting.
Correct.
And once in a while, we'll catch it. Either Barb will catch it, I might catch it.
Barb will catch it.
Yeah.
But you said earlier,
Wait a
we
minute,
can
let's stop the
email,
chit chat.
we can email about planning a meeting. So you can reply all to reschedule a meeting.
It's not good practice to make, it's trying to be consistent, you can.
So you just earlier said you can reply all to discuss scheduling a meeting.
No, I said you can never reply. You could reply, like if you had a member of your committee, like Dawn could reply to you and say, I can make it. But that's not good practice. Where you have Kristen, right? The suggestion would be have Kristen send the email out and then folks can reply to Kristen. As the chair, if you send it out, it's okay if you send it out. The problem comes if folks start replying back or if they're replying to all.
And then they start adding.
Then conversation could start about content of the meeting, the agenda. It's just not a good path to go down.
It's a slippery slope and it's easy to go off track on that. And Kristen did a great thing with a rescheduling, though I looked at it from my phone and I didn't notice that she did. It was a survey with 3 times recently to see if anybody wanted to reschedule on the Conservation Commission from February 14th. So that was great. She actually sent out a survey. For rescheduling, it was really effective. But yeah, the slippery slope, it only takes 2 people to reply to all and start talking about other things other than when they're available.
Well, to me, we're allowed to talk about, from what I understand about 91A, and I have been through some trainings, and I think it isn't clear what this information is provided, what is and what isn't able to be provided. And the flow chart I think is nice, but it's still pretty vague in my point of view. I mean, we need to communicate at some level through email, and because not everyone can come to every meeting, and so there has to be some level of emailing back and forth. And as long as it's not about specific things, it is, I think, an important tool for us boards to maintain
It all depends on what issues you're talking about though, right? I mean, you have to give an example.
So, but we were just talking about rescheduling a meeting. I mean, that's one obvious thing. We've had other sort of events, things like that are related to what we do, but not actually things we're deciding or taking action on. Those have always been something that we can email about.
So I'll answer it. When the first 91A training that I did went to that the NHMA, New Hampshire Municipal Association put on. 2 of their attorneys came, we met here in the library, and I think the best example they gave is, three members of the select board are a quorum, okay? 3 members show up at a barbecue, or 3 members show up at me and Ollie's, and they sit down and they have a cup of coffee. Is that considered a meeting? No, but the minute they start discussing town business, now all of a sudden you violate 91A. So, that's a
Can't meet under a tree.
very basic way to put it, but that's a good way to remember it.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a perfect example.
I know, but I think his question though is like, in terms of, right, the scheduling a meeting, because the point of 91A is to not conduct business that is not.
That should be done.
Right, so we already know we can schedule a meeting by
But, no, I know, but his point is like, you can reply all if you need to, it just is FOIA, I believe, like, I mean, all of this stuff.
You can, but my point only was.
That it's not best practice.
It's not best practice, because then when you're replying to all, and people start replying to all, and then people start adding more than the schedule, which is very easy to happen. That was my only
Can I make a suggestion? There's a thing called Doodle Poll that you can sign up for and send it out and give specific dates and times that people can
reply that this is when they can make it, and then you see where if you have a quorum on this day, say, this is where we're having the meeting.
That's what Kristen used earlier. It was
We
perfect.
have a membership at Parks and Rec that we use for other organizations, and that's.
Nice, every
So,
department have it.
Don, hold on one second, the guy that gets all the 91A requests, why don't we have you weigh in? What you're most comfortable with,
As far as scheduling a meeting?
or just emails replying to all, I mean, if you're fine with that?
Yeah, I think people should generally, well, let's say generally, people should avoid replying all that are members of boards, committees, and commissions. I think that is a recipe for a problem. I think you have to be very well disciplined to be able to do just a scheduling of a meeting, time, date, place, send it out, and work with our office or whichever office you're affiliated with to get it posted. And that's that. And that's how I would recommend it. Doodle's fine if that's a method to use.
You never see anyone's reply. You just go on and see the results of what people voted on. And you can pick multiple times and multiple days, find out when you quorum it.
But I agree with Nancy's view, which is what happens is if you're only scheduling a meeting, all of a sudden it devolves into other conversations about what's being discussed, town business. Then you're into the sequential communications, you're into a meeting, and that's a problem. So I think Nico made the point earlier, at every instance you should rely on the staff as much as you can to schedule your meetings for you. And it should be up to the chair to do that and make that happen and go through staff. We can sort of herd everybody and make sure that the notice gets made.
Russ, we got a question. On the Community Power Aggregation Committee, we have no staff member on that. And I generally send out a draft agenda to the committee prior to the meeting. Is that a violation of 91A? Should I not be doing that?
As long as they're not replying all
As long as they only
and
reply
getting
to
into a
me.
discussion
If they just reply to me, that's fine.
as one member.
Quorum of them is
Well,
two.
does it depend on what they're replying?
Right.
You know, if they're referencing something in the agenda, that's a problem. But if they're referencing the time of the agenda or the location or something, that's different.
So for example, to me, it seems reasonable, if you're sending out a draft agenda, does anyone have anything to add?
Yeah.
And they reply with a topic to add to the agenda.
Just to the chair
Yeah,
and staff.
right.
Yeah, well, that's okay. Okay.
Right, because they'll all see what's on your agenda when you post it, when you have it posted,
When
and
we
you
finally
can send
post
it
it,
to them.
Okay.
Don, you've been patient.
This is unusual for me, isn't it?
It is.
But medication I'm on. No, actually, Mr. Dean is right. The reply all is the death knell of 91A, of transparency. I'm old enough to go back in business, and we just started email. And one of the things we were taught, even in the business world, many, many years ago, do not hit reply all. It's there, but don't hit it.
Right.
Reply. So if the chair of the board or commission wishes to send an email out to all his members to say, I want to schedule a meeting, what works for you? They should only reply back to the chair individually. And maybe at that point, the chair should make a note that only reply to me. So that way, and that's how we'll get around it too, because that's, sometimes we might be able to do it very quickly, and I love the poll, but sometimes it takes a week to the poll, people to answer the poll and so forth. So as long as it's said that when you respond to a question about having a meeting and a schedule, reply only to the sender. We can do a song from Elvis, right? Return to sender.
With no deliberation on agenda items.
Right, no, I know, that's,
It's just,
and that's
yeah.
right, it is a slippery
It's
slope.
Tuesday at 7, I'm there.
It is a slippery slope, there's no question about that. And you gotta have a little bit of,
Best
willpower not to
practice,
do it.
just don't do it. Right.
Our Energy Committee Chair sends out the agenda to all the members And the first thing it says is, I think it says it in the subject line too, it says, do not reply all.
Good
And
practice.
if you have a comment, tell her. So it's, do not reply all, it's your basic signature.
Also, I'm just gonna have one more thing, that if you're a voting member and you can't make it, it's the chair who you want to send that to and not everybody. Again, because then you get into reply all, and it's the chair who's going to be keeping track of your quorum for the upcoming meeting. So it's really important if you can't make a meeting, whether you're an alternate or a full member, voting member, to let your chair know that you cannot attend a meeting.
And I guess I would amend that to say, and the staff support too. So whatever staff member is assigned to that committee, if you include both the chair and the staff.
Yeah, because I did that, or I sent Kristen an email with the agenda for this evening instead of to the chair.
What's the consequence of violating 91A if you just happen to do it once and it was a problem? What happens?
Go to jail.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it could invoke a lawsuit, and then if that happens, then a court would take it up, Superior Court. And if I say we, but if the town is found in violation, it could end up a financial penalty and attorney's fees if it's egregious.
So it's the town that would be found liable.
Right, we all here in this room represent the town,
Yeah.
whether it's at a volunteer level or we're all required to follow the law. And that would, you know.
We probably would reappoint you.
Or maybe you're coming in for life.
I'm thinking, in the River Committee, we've postponed a number of meetings, like several months in a row, and we may do it again. So if I do reply all to a mail that I sent a long time ago to all the people in the meeting, and I say we're postponing the meeting, the next possible meeting would be, 3rd July of the next month. I don't think that's a problem, right? Unless people are using the reply all to talk about stuff. So you need to say in this email, don't reply all to discuss any issue, so maybe that comment would be worthwhile in the meeting. But isn't that a reasonable thing to do, to pick an email where you send it to everybody before and reply to all and tell them what the status is for the next meeting?
Yeah, you wouldn't be violating anything unless in that thread, someone violated it. And then you're violating it by resending it and resending it.
Right, so I need to have a comment in here that do not reply to all to discuss any
Right,
matter.
and if somebody does, then you want to start a new thread the next time you send an email to everyone.
So Dick, as the recipient of your emails, I would say that it's not in violation, but you might just want to put in, please do not reply all.
Yeah, thank you.
There's also another possible penalty too, which is the court could, depending upon the circumstances, invalidate an action by a committee. So if we think about our regulatory boards,
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
if that was a problem, then it could end up in an invalidation of an action taken.
And not following how votes are taken can also invalidate an action of a committee. So if you're on a committee and you vote for something and it's not done properly, your vote isn't, what's the word?
Binding.
Binding, that's it. So just keep that in mind too.
Right?
Yeah, is 91A training a requirement as a volunteer?
It hasn't been, but we offer it.
Every year.
So essentially the town is taking risk by having volunteers without mandating that they take this training.
Can we mandate volunteers to
Well, if you remember when you came into my office today,
I
you
did.
just signed a volunteer
Yep.
agreement form.
Yep.
And in that packet that you received, your orientation packet, it gives you the 91A information in there.
Absolutely, which is why I'm familiar with this information, but just wanted to make sure that there was no requirement to take 91A training, and if it is a risk to the town in general, why
It's good practice.
Yeah, and that's why we're here. We're
I
making
would
sure
think so.
everyone is aware of it, and that's why I said earlier, I have taken it every year for many years,
Yeah.
because I volunteered at one level or another.
I see why it's so important.
And it's important to do it.
Well, and Chetna will remember when the Sustainability Advisory Committee was implemented by the Select Board in 2019, like, I think the first 3 meetings, I had Chetna put 91A on the agenda, because this was a new committee with all new volunteers. So we can't, Julie's right, we can't mandate it. We can strongly encourage you.
Certainly.
Is it a risk? You know, I mean, having a volunteer do anything is a risk.
Right.
It's a risk
Yeah.
asking you to come into the building. It's a risk to elect officials who, you know, everything's a risk.
Yeah, oh, no, I completely understand that. I was curious, that's all.
The 91A training is the free stuff anyways by the New Hampshire Municipal Association. And I was just wondering, how many of you have ever gotten notified that the training is available to you?
All my boards better raise their hand.
Yeah.
All my boards better raise their hand.
I know for sure
And
that.
it's on demand, it's on demand as well, so
Right.
you can take it anytime.
Excellent.
Yeah, so when I've taken it at my office, and sometimes I get just, I'm at work, so, you know,
Yeah.
priorities, right? But because I've registered, I always get an email when that particular training is available. They'll send you a link, and so you can watch it as many times. It's always available. Yeah.
That's excellent.
So, you know, right, all kidding aside too, as a select board, the last year, we're working on, and we've done this in 3 or 4 of our select board meetings this year, we're working on setting up some criteria for onboarding, for orientation, so it, you know, we've recognized that, and we're in the process of finalizing how that onboarding will be done, with whom, recognizing that, you know, robust orientation is a benefit to everybody.
And also, from a budget perspective, we are, right from our, is our chair still here, for the Budget Recommendation Committee, right on up. We are really good about making sure we're funding our department heads for their training, but we also pay subscription or dues to organizations that provide training. So there is training available.
Excellent.
So maybe we just need to do a better job at getting that information available. I don't know, maybe we could set up a volunteer tab or something so that they could go and, I don't know. Sorry, just coming out of my brain right now is a thought.
We can notify everybody again about
Just
the
like
training.
a place where volunteers could
Yeah.
go to see what's available.
Encourage them to take the training and
Absolutely.
then check the box. Once they have, they can report back to us that they've done it.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Russ, I know we kind of jumped around, but if you wanted to just introduce, you don't have to go through it, but just Robert's Rules of Order.
No.
Just having folks just familiarize themselves with it.
Yeah, so also in the packet is a Robert's Rules cheat sheet. And basically, it's a series of motions that are common to Robert's Rules. And so when you are, you know, when you're in a meeting and you are dealing with a particular issue, you're looking to maybe amend a motion as an example, or suspend further consideration of something, the Robert's Rules shows you how to actually do that and make the proper motion to do it. So it also, I'm looking at the suspend further consideration of something, I move that we table it, interrupt speaker, no, second needed, you need a second for it, it's not debatable, not amendable, and vote needed is majority. So this is a really good table to go through and learn if you want to become a parliamentarian and really get into Robert's Rules of Order. You can carry this around with you to your meetings and just learn the different motions that are in here and how they work.
Russ, just one thing, I haven't had a chance to study this, but motion and second before any discussion.
Yes.
Yes, right?
Yes.
We have that sometimes it goes to the planning board, like, you can't second it because I wanna talk about it. Well, you will talk about it once it's made, it's on the floor. right?
Yeah, my understanding is every motion needs a second,
The second, that's a second,
and then you go, and
discussion.
then you go into
Then
discussion.
discussion.
Right.
And when everyone's happy with the discussion, then maybe you vote.
What I wanted to add.
Did
Totally
you have
lost.
anything else? Did you? Okay. For the sake of time, I would like to really throw the remainder out to the boards and committees and representatives here, if there are any priorities or any initiatives that you're interested in speaking about this evening. Any suggestions on, I guess we covered the board, but really open it up to you for comments, questions, ideas.
Before you do that, my thought went away and now it's back, so if you wouldn't mind. The other thing about meetings that I think is really important, a lot of us are in a meeting room after that gavel closes the meeting. It's important, of course, we can all have conversations about the football games or the baseball games or whatever, but there really should be no continuing conversation of anything that was discussed in the meeting.
And the
That-
microphones may still be on.
Right.
Oh, they are.
But whether they are, it still cannot happen, that
Step
just
out to the street.
to please keep that in mind. That's fine to talk amongst ourselves, but you cannot talk about, it's like you're continuing the meeting after you've closed it, so.
And to Lang's point, when you're the chair and you're opening the meeting, the gavel, you hit the gavel, and that prompts Will and his crew out
Yeah.
back to start filming. Because the microphones are always live,
Yes, those
the mics
microphones
are always
live.
live,
Will knows everything.
okay? But when you hit the gavel, Exeter TV stops. Now, when you adjourn, you also have to hit the gavel. And I'm not gonna name the committee, they're not here tonight, but I try to watch all of your meetings, by the way. A committee adjourned, but didn't hit the gavel, and fortunately, they weren't talking about anything that was troublesome, because that mic was still hot for about a minute and a half, so please keep that in mind.
Right. Okay, I'm sorry to
No,
interrupt you.
that was a good
Um,
point.
Where's your gavel tonight?
Just water.
Mike,
One thing I would say from experience is if there's something in a meeting that you even think needs a vote, take a vote.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you repeat that? I didn't.
Mike said that if you're at a committee or board meeting, if you're not sure if something needs a vote, take the vote anyway.
Yeah.
When in question.
And use your staff. I mean, if you're staffed with a town employee, that's what they're there for, to help you clarify what's needed.
And work out I mean, you could, before you make the motion, if you're unsure, I mean, you can talk to staff, you could talk to the select board rep, and try to work out the motion before you make it. Right?
Yeah, and I think it's always good practice to vote and confirm the actions of the committee or board. I think Mike makes a very valid point.
Yeah, just recently on the planning board, when we were talking about the new zoning, and the planning board members asked Mr. Sharple.
The library will close promptly in 15 minutes at 8 p.m. If you have a library laptop, please bring it to the desk at this time.
I like I was on a plane for a minute there, and airline stewardess was doing a thing. So anyway, and Mr. Sharples helped clarify that because we didn't need a motion to not have the zoning amendment on the ballot. We could just keep talking about it, so.
So I think the takeaway, we've had some great suggestions and conversation, and I think more so, Mr. Dean, I think two of the things that we can start working on is the two ways of communicating. Number one, between committees, as the members of the Concom suggested, and then Gwen's idea with all of some other ideas here about different ways we can communicate through the website or email blasts or.
Yeah, we'll have some action.
Bye, Don.
items. Action items coming out of it.
Okay. We're not gonna wait another 8 years to do this, but we won't schedule a follow-up right now, but I would like to do one later in the year, come back,
Yeah, so I figured 3 months is May, 6 months is August. August is not the best time to be scheduling
Sometime in the
something, so
fall,
maybe in the fall.
before the holidays, well, yeah.
So 9 months out.
So before we close, does anybody else have any thoughts or suggestions or comments?
I think one comment that you made was use your staff person. I mean, I think every board chairman has a staff to connect to. Is that correct?
Almost. Julie's got two.
It's never been quite clear that Barb is our connection.
She is now. Fair enough. So I guess I would be your connection on the HDC. I don't know.
Which would maybe be another plus.
But anyways, so is that correct? Everyone has a, use your staff people.
And when in doubt, the town manager's office or even the select board, we're always available. So, thank you all very much for your time tonight. It was nice to see everybody. Yes, thank you, Dick. Motion to adjourn.